Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Syahlaa Puspita Aliifah and my partner Waqidhatus Sya'diyah. We are from Group 4. Today we will presentation our final project. Our topic is about cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. So stay tuned and let's start it. In the second slide, we have table of content. There are definition, types, positive and negative effect, example, and the last conclusion. Okay, what is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is the idea that all norms, beliefs, and values are dependent on their cultural context and should not be used in the study or description of another culture. Cultural relativism is the principle of regarding and valuing the practices of a culture from the point of view of that culture and to avoid making hasty judgment. There are two types of cultural relativism. Number 1, absolute cultural relativism. Absolute cultural relativism indicates that whatever activities are practiced within a culture, no matter how weird and dangerous they appear to be, should not be questioned by other cultures. Number 2, critical cultural relativism. Critical cultural relativism asks questions about cultural practices and why they are practiced. It seeks answers about the cultural practices in line with who is accepting them and why they are doing so. The next slide is about positive and negative effect. Positive effect of cultural relativism. First, respect is encouraged in a system of cultural relativism. People come from different cultures. They have different ideas. They pursue different definition of success. Because such a system promotes the individual's definition instead of a group definition, a society can evolve because there is a natural level of respect built into the process. Each person is naturally given the right to pursue life through their own specific perspective and then learn from their experience in a way that works best for them. Second, cultural relativism creates a society without judgment. We are so trained to judge others in today's world that we don't even give it a second thought. Looking at someone and saying, "Glad that isn't me," it's a judgment. Under the theory of cultural relativism, judgment goes away. The only person that judges you is yourself. People who might disagree with you are able to set their own code and standards for their own individualistic bubble. Instead of worrying about others, you only worry about yourself. Third, moral relativism can be excluded from cultural relativism. Each culture can be treated as an individual under the theory of cultural relativism. This means the moral code of a culture can be defined and an expectation implemented that people follow it. Although other cultures may not set up such a restriction and others might say such a restriction isn't a true form of cultural relativism. People in such a system can do what makes the most sense for them. You're focusing on the custom of a culture, not the morality that is imposed upon those customs. Negative effect of cultural relativism. First, it creates a system that is fueled by personal bias. Every society has a certain natural bias to it because of how humanity operates. People tend to prefer to be with others who have similar thoughts and feelings, so they segregate themselves into neighborhoods, communities, and social groups that share specific perspective. When people are given the power to define their own moral code, then they will do so based on their own personal bias. There is no longer a group perspective. People follow their own code at the expense of others. Second, it is an idea that is based on the perfection of humanity. Many people strive to do good every day. Most want to see everyone have the chance to pursue happiness in some way. That is why the idea of cultural relativism often seems to be inviting. The only problem is that people are not perfect. We can be forgetful, we can lie, we can become aggressive when a driver cuts you off while driving and puts your family at risk. Without a group moral code in place to govern decision, anything could happen when we experience this moment of imperfection. Third, it could limit moral progress. When we look at the idea of moral progress, we think of becoming more inclusionary instead of exclusionary. This inclusion is reflected in the laws and customs of culture. The current debate on the transgender bathroom laws in North Carolina and Texas is a good example of this. In cultural relativism, everyone will be able to use their bathroom of choice, or a culture could state that everyone must use a specific bathroom without exception, and there will be complete agreement in either choice. Within the society, either choice would be seen as moral progress, but in reality it could hold people back. The example of cultural relativism. Number 1. Food cultural relativism. Fried crickets are disgusting. One should instead ask, why do some cultures eat fried instead? You may learn that fried crickets or grasshoppers are full of protein, and in Mexico it is famous Oaxaca regional cuisine and have been eaten for thousands of years as a healthy food source. Number 2, absolute cultural relativism is the tying of feet of Chinese women in the 19th and 28th centuries. According to history, Chinese people found small feet in women as a symbol of beauty. Therefore, for women to get married, they had to go through the process of feet beautification. The process involved tying a young lady's feet to inhibit its growth. Women from rich families were mostly able to undergo this practice, since it was difficult for a person with such tight feet to move around and make a living. Other cultures shunned this practice, but they had no influence over it. Okay, the next presentation will be continued by my partner, Waqidhatus Sya'diyah.
Ethnocentrism is the tendency to look at the world primarily from the perspective of one's own culture. An ethnocentric judges another culture solely by the value and standard of one's own culture. Part of ethnocentrism is the belief that one's own race, ethnic or cultural group is the most important, or that some or all aspects of its culture are superior to those of the other group. Some people will simply call it cultural ignorance. Positive and negative effect of ethnocentrism. Positive effect of ethnocentrism. First, ethnocentrism can be a way to improve the world. There are some moral absolutes which exist throughout almost every human society in history. When people can come together to take a moral stand, then they can speak with a collective voice that can shape the world in positive ways. Second, it creates an attitude of independence. The people who maintain an ethnocentric view in life will not typically bother much about other societies and cultures in the world, past or present. This attitude caused them to lead a self-directed life. Some groups may come together with a similar perspective of the world, but there are also others who decide to thrive under independent isolation. Third, an ethnocentric perspective eliminates social other criticism. When a society takes an ethnocentric approach, then it works to eliminate any criticism there might be of the social order. The general population will not start thinking about different political philosophy or starter because they become loyal through ethnocentrism to what currently exists. Negative effect of ethnocentrism. It is a philosophy which limits the human perspective. The act of dismissing any talk of evolution or change at the micro or macro level is evidence of an ethnocentric perspective. Second, ethnocentric limits the choice that people can make. When you have two items of equal quality and price available for purchase, having a consistent preference for something produced in a manner of which you approve is an ethnocentrism viewpoint. Even in a free market economy, where people are free to choose whatever they want, the judgment of someone buying foreign instead of domestic sets the foundation for all the other disadvantaged listed here. Third, ethnocentrism can cause societal polarization. Ethnocentrism is an embrace of negativity because the only goal or the approach to prove individual superiority. It makes us feel good to think that the decisions we make in life are better than the ones that other people made, especially in the areas of religious salvation, moral fortitude, and family planning. Next is types of ethnocentrism. There are two types in ethnocentrism. First, flexible ethnocentrism is defined as the way a person can learn how to properly control their ego and perception. In the face of reality of the world, where there are many tribes and groups, objective efforts are still made when looking at someone from another group. Second, inflexibility ethnocentrism is described as the form of a person who cannot understand people from the other groups whose cultural background are different. Those with this attitude of intolerance only judge subjectively and based on habit in their group. There is example of ethnocentrism. First, judging women's cultural outfit. Women's outfit differ significantly across culture and societies. And while many of us may say, it's a woman's right to decide what she wears and we should respect her no matter what, different cultures have various views on this. Second example of ethnocentrism is colonialism. Colonialism can be defined as cultural domination with enforced social change. Colonialism refers to the social system in which the political conquest by one society of another leads to cultural domination with enforced social change. The last one is about conclusion. Ethnocentrism and cultural relativism is the way in which you evaluate and access foreign culture. Ethnocentrism involves looking at another culture from the perspective of one's own culture, while cultural relativism involves looking at the another culture by its own perspective instead of one's own culture. Culture is the belief, value, social form, and material traits of a particular social group. Ethnocentrism and cultural relativism are two ways in which we assess a cultural that is not our own. Ethnocentrism is the act to judge other cultures according to the first conception originate in the standard and custom of one own culture. Cultural relativism, on the other hand, is the concept that cultural norms and values of people have to be understood with their own cultural context. So that is our presentation about cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. Is there any mistake? I will apologize. Thank you and goodbye.